in NAC, we're gonna host monthly tournaments from now on. We have a good amount of sponsors compared to like 2 months ago, 3 months ago. They're all willing to invest like 200 to 100 to $200 per event, and we have multiple. So we're gonna have a monthly tournament this October, which all of you guys know is on the 28th, 2 weeks from now. Pretty convenient time for everyone. Good time for EU people to make it, and good time for NA people to make it. We'll also have a tournament in November, and the tournaments in November and December will be balanced with like winter break and like Thanksgiving break and midterms and all of that. So if we're worried about convenient dates such as that, all of that, we'll plan out those dates so we can obviously maximize the most amount of teams and most amount of people that can join up those tournaments. And regarding content, Linde will be talking about content. So
Yeah, no, guys. Yeah, so something that we definitely need to bring back is some content, and obviously, as you guys seen the announcements, the YouTube release of the NAC YouTube competitive. So we're gonna be doing that. We're gonna be doing monthly videos, top 10 clips. So at the last day of every month, we're going to be dropping a video, not crazy editing or anything too extreme. It's going to be stuff that everybody can engage in, and we're going to be also taking tournament clips. So if anybody has any clips, suggestions, definitely DM any of us, and we'll be able to, upload that, and you guys are going to enjoy that for sure.
yeah, and yeah, I guess we kept that pretty brief, but just kind of like talking about the vision for NAC again. Like these next couple of months, we're kind of Krunker, and we have like a dev in this call with Krunker kind of starting back and everything. I'd like to just give thanks and like appreciation to all the sponsors, to everyone that's kind of just stuck through in this community when it comes with just hearing out feedback, playing the pickups, and even giving me feedback, and just kind of just still playing pickups and still being dedicated to like one knack or KPC has to offer. It means a lot, and it's a big appreciation because when we have good stuff like this coming back, where we have a dev in this call and we have like Krunker kind of putting effort again into the game, we're all ready and prepared for it, and we all get to just work together in this. And I'd also just like to give a huge thanks to all the sponsors we have in this call, making tournaments, making seasons, making everything possible still. I'd also like to give a huge thanks to Glenn for sponsoring this upcoming EU tournament. It's pretty big having a dev kind of come in and already be engaged in the competitive side compared to like how the past has been with Comp and Krunker. So yeah. And Glenn, I'd like to just start this off by just introduce yourself for everyone in the stage and audience.
Yep.
So
Hey guys, I'm Glenn. So my role at FRVR is I lead the core tech engineering teams, which is fairly involved. That means we develop all the services, infrastructure, deployment pipelines, channel integrations, and so on. Like the Discord integration and stuff was the core tech team. Game services, leaderboards, multiplayer servers, all the underlying infrastructure on cloud, etc. That's all our team. So we do everything except for the games themselves, which is why I'm very, very apprehensive to be mixed into like the game dev category. My role in Krunker at the moment specifically is Brian's obviously taken over the project now, and following like Yendis leaving, there's basically a couple week period where I'm on special call to go change a bunch of the underlying infrastructure, and we can talk a lot about that in a minute. And so that's like I'm on temporary loan from the current projects in the company and the current initiatives to go help out the Krunker thing. I was a little bit involved at the start during the acquisition. Sydney had made it quite important that the people in FRVR and especially like the leads and stuff get involved with the community. So I did, and then Noon put the FRVR badge on me on Discord, so I've been kind of stuck with it since. But then as the studio split off and became more independent of FRVR, I stopped being involved essentially until the recent developments with Brian taking over. So the sort of thing that I'll be working on at the moment are, like I said, like server infrastructure. That's pretty open-ended. It's how the servers and stuff get run, scheduled, scale, things like this. I won't be working on main gameplay stuff. I'll probably do a little things here and there, like occasionally. but there's going to be a lot more, let's say, qualified people to work on the actual game.
Yeah, and so Glenn, you mentioned you're like part of a team, and I know you're not working specifically with Krunker as a game dev, but what is some like visions and big changes you have for Krunker, like, or like some stuff that you might know of that you can kind of tell the public and kind of see where competitive gets integrated with that? Because um we there was a bunch of rumors the last couple months that Krunker is going to be turned into a Facebook version of the Krunker mobile, and obviously
No, God,
Brian
no,
mentioned that,
no.
yeah. So I'd like to just like hear a little bit like what that vision and that change is going to be coming forward for Krunker.
So I'm going to skirt around a lot of things, and people might not like my answers. And the reason I'm doing that is because Brian will actually follow up with another kind of announcement to give a bit more history. He's already spoken with a lot of content creators, but he'll give a little bit more history on what actually happened the last couple of years and what the plans are for it. What I will say is that he is absolutely not naive or ignorant to how much the competitive scene carries Krunker. Like, he definitely understands how important it is. There is, however, a lot to be understood with competitive Krunker. So you can't make some bold statements about doing X, Y, or Z, like features and stuff. There's a lot of things on the roadmap. I say a roadmap, it's more like just a Miro board with like 500 tickets on it or something. But I will say that there's probably nothing you guys can say or think of that we haven't already thought of, and that the team is still, and Brian in particular, is still very involved in interested in getting more feedback on how that should look. He'll admit that he doesn't quite understand Krunker competitive enough to make like assertive decisions in the game design and such, right? So he's probably gonna, I actually already know he's reached out to a couple of you already, or some of you have already spoken to him. But he's going to be very involved in the community going forwards with those decisions. So I don't think there's going to be a major game design change that isn't driven by the community going forwards, because we don't want to, well, rub salt in the wound. Really, it's been bad enough. So what currently is working on now that I can tell you about is the infrastructure changes. So this is stuff from me and one of my colleagues in my team. We've stepped out of our usual kind of day-to-day work to work on some Krunker architectural things. Is anything to do with game servers, specifically like what they run on, how they get scheduled. I don't fully know, or like, there's a lot of problems. I think people know there's a lot of like underlying or fundamental problems with like how the Krunker servers run, right? Like, you could be playing a competitive game. I've watched it happen twice in the last couple of hours, and then you disconnect. Like, I can't tell you with confidence why that happens. And we can go into like super big engineering detail of all this stuff. I'm going to try and keep it a little bit vague, but it's not something simple like instance hit 100% CPU usage or something, right? Like, they're fundamental underlying like logical errors that are happening that we have no observability on. So the first thing we're working on now, the one thing Strike got really good is the architecture. Like, it's full elastic auto scaling architecture, right? And the resources it runs on are a lot more like powerful than what Strike currently runs. Sorry, not that IO currently runs on. So IO right now spans, I don't know, 1,000 VMs or something. Like, they're all just split across 3 or 4 different providers. They're all run on one CPU virtual machines, and they kind of register themselves to a matchmaker and call it a day, right? And I think a lot of people that are like technically competent in the community are quite aware of this already. Mm-hmm. Strike doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. Strike is completely auto scaling. Lobbies have an elastic scaling, so they take the resources they need based on the demand that they currently have. So, for example, a lobby with 1 player in jumping around, like a custom game, passworded lobby or something, doesn't need a 1 CPU instance the same way an 8-player competitive game does, right? Like, this makes no sense. How Strike works is a lobby takes from a resource pool what it needs, and will like, lobbies can essentially like register themselves and kill themselves based on demand and all this shit. It matters a lot internally because it means we're not paying for 1,000 VMs. And even more importantly, it gives us like a lot of observability on servers. So right now, Krunker servers like have essentially no error reporting. And so if something goes wrong, like a competitive game crashes, it's basically down to someone has to log into whatever provider supports that region, like AWS or something, find the instance it was running on, try and find some logs. Most of the error logs aren't logged in the first place, so we can't see them. There's just like a lot. Like it's like very overwhelming. There's a lot of catch up we have to do to get there. We're already pretty far ahead. Like, fortunately, there's a lot we can kind of copy and paste from Strike. They use the same underlying game server. A lot of the changes there we can just like reapply to IO. So we've already made moves on that. And the only thing kind of like stopping us going forwards now is some of the dev workflow stuff. It's really like bureaucratic engineering things. Like, I don't know how to like even connect to a game server when running the game locally without also running these 10 other services. So there's just a lot of like really boring administrative like BAU stuff we got to figure out, right? What this means though is that the moment this observability and stuff is rolled out and it's on the new architecture and stuff, we can actually see what's going wrong and we can address it and we can start fixing them and creating tickets and creating a backlog and really like solving the problems people are having. And I think that stuff's going to happen a lot quicker than it sounds. Like, the way when I say it like that, it's like realistically we're probably talking about tickets that will go on a backlog for the next year or two. But I think there's some very like major issues happening that people don't, and people aren't fully aware of what they are yet, that we can start solving like now, essentially. Like, so one thing we're going to do is, we've not fully figured out the rollout strategy for this, but we need to test the new architecture. So I think like my naive assumption is that you guys aren't going to notice a difference, and that's fine, because it will mean the world to us internally when it's on new architecture, because we get observability and auto scaling and all this shit. You are going to be on like faster CPUs and stuff. We're not going to hold back on that. There are some regions that are more privileged than others when it comes to like Google Cloud resources. But we're just going to like slam Krunker servers on the essentially like the most compute optimized resources possible. That means you might inherit some benefits from that. I hope you do. But like I kind of touched on earlier, a lot of the problems are app logic or like fundamental errors in the app code. So when that happens, we need to roll it out. I have no fucking clue how that's going to work at the moment. We can't exactly just do like a global rollout and hope it goes well. So I think what we're going to do is a staging and maybe like post the link in a server somewhere, like on KB or in the competitive servers, and let people kind of nuke it and see what happens. And then do a gradual region by region rollout or something. The moment that's done, like, we can start addressing like, yeah, really like all the errors you see day to day, rubber banding, disconnects, server restarts, like desync issues and stuff. We can start, and that'll be in the next like few weeks. I think we'll get observability on that stuff, and we can start creating tickets. That's my job for the next like week or two. The Krunker Strike team has been hired a lot for recently. It's now just one Krunker team now that we've absorbed IO. Brian's hired a lot recently, like in the last month. We've got some really good engineers and stuff on the team now, like genuinely impressive talent, which has upscaled the capability of like the development we can do. When they finish their existing project, I believe like the majority of that, or a large portion of that, is moving to IO. Brian, like he said in his announcement, like regarding the Facebook thing you spoke about, we can squash that now. Like, that's not happening. Like, Strike is the Facebook / hyper casual version of the game. Brian does not believe that that's what the Krunker IO community wants. It's not a secret, is it? Like, everyone knows that. And he believes the future is in IO. And that does mean acknowledging the competitive community as well. Like, there's no long-term Krunker IO is kind of like, for us, I would say it's inherent that means a more serious community, a more competitive community, and eventually like a more real competition, right? and then working towards getting to a point where that can actually happen. Obviously, to get there though, like you can't keep having competitive games where people are crashing, right? Like people can throw around a bunch of stuff or demands or asks for higher tick rates and ranked and all this shit. Like that ain't happening before like people stop crashing in competitive games. Like, that's ridiculous. Like that can't happen, right? Like you need proper stable servers. So there's unfortunately going to be a lot of like you'll benefit a lot from it, but there's not going to be like shiny new rocks to play with, you know. Like it's just going to be fixing problems for a while, and there's a decent backlog to get through there. Game bugs and issues and desync problems or whatever the fuck, right? Like it's just it's pretty abysmal. So the competitive community before the team starts working on game design based initiatives or new features are gonna inherently benefit from better stability on servers, better security on accounts so that people aren't stealing your shit all the time and so on, right? Like that's all to start with. It's open-ended from there. And what I will say is like, just to reiterate, there's probably nothing you can mention that we've not got on a board for a backlog. But we're really open to feedback. Brian will. I was mentioning to the admins a second ago. Brian actually said he would have joined this call today, but he's just got a family thing that popped up. So I assume you can expect to hear from him quite soon. But he's like fully open to hearing from all of you, like on what it is you want in not just competitive scene, but like in the game in general. He's already making moves around the community. I think some of the admins here have already spoken to him. Else he's got you on his waitlist essentially. So it's going to be, yeah, there's not going to be a feature worked on for competitive without the like NAC and KPC and that involved. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that answers the question, and that answered more than I asked. I thank you for that long response. And kind of going back to what you said, you mentioned there's multiple teams working within Krunker. Like you're working on the server side, you have developers coming in to work with some of like the ranked and maybe like the other ideas. I was kind of curious if there is a team that will be working on gameplay changes specifically, such as working on guns, maybe new maps, maybe updating the competitive preset, or even updating presets and UI menus, all of
There's
that.
one Krunker team, right? Like there's internally now, it was split between the Strike team and the IO team, and the IO team was Yendis, as you know it, right? With Sydney and that leaving, and Techie was the last person after he left. It's now like now Brian stepped in. It's one Krunker team. I'm the exception in that, like, because we own and have the skill set for all infrastructure and stuff. Like, I'm stepping in for that. I'm kind of holding my boundaries internally very clear. Like, I don't consider myself a game developer, so I'm being very apprehensive around like stepping into more typical game devy responsibilities. That's why when people, are asking me to unban X streamer or whatever, like I'm trying my best to not get involved. It doesn't mean I don't have access, but like it ain't my job. There's better qualified people for that, and that includes like game dev. So you're gonna get one team working on it. Like after that, it's gonna be me helping a little bit, probably forever, I would assume. But how that work then gets split up in that team is, I don't know. There's going to be a priority list. It's what Brian said in the announcement. There's some like major changes that need to happen with account security, people stealing accounts, botting, and all this shit, right? Marketplace as well also has like major issues with it, and security, like everything with the social hub. You've got these guys that are like ransoming it for $5 a pop to stop botting social. Like all this shit has to get fixed first. I'll be involved in a lot of that, but like it works asynchronously. Like whilst I'm doing that, it doesn't mean everyone else is spinning on their chairs, sitting on their hands, right? Like they're gonna work on other gameplay things, and that's probably gonna start with optimizations and stuff. And then whenever features come around, and I don't know what major new feature is gonna start with, there's no decision made on any of that stuff at the moment. There's purely just like a board of 100 tickets, like post-it notes essentially, of things that should get worked on in the next, I don't know, year or two. But what actually gets worked on is going to be, I think, down to the community. I've been pushing with Brian very strongly that he like and he already is, and he will be more communicative with the community, primarily through KB, I imagine, um, and then yeah, the official competitive communities, and he's gonna work out with what needs to get worked on with you guys. Like it's feedback for everything. We're making no assumptions on anything at the moment. So when it comes to like modding or UI stuff or whatever, like I honestly don't know. It's going to be essentially down to you guys and Brian to figure that out. I would personally think that like I don't know, UI changes or some UI changes or actually I'd be curious about your guys' take on this. I was talking to someone a second ago. I didn't think this is a good reason as to why I'm not the one making the decisions here. I didn't think that modding was that important. Like I thought the community would be okay with that being deferred. I've since learned absolutely not. Like you guys need modding. So I don't know. Like it's all going to be down to the community at the moment. I think FRVR is pretty. I don't want to say ignorant, but like fairly naive to what the community deems important, and they don't want to upset you again. So it's going to be whatever new feature or whatever UI work that you say is going to come down to like how many resources get allocated on the project over the next few weeks, what the underlying issues are that need being fixed, and then working with you guys to figure out what's next. Essentially, you'll know everything. Like there's going to be no secrets, and I think you're going to get a more thorough overview about what's getting worked on in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, that's one of the things I'm going to have to be fairly vague about, unfortunately, and it's specifically because I don't really know.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious. A lot of people in the competitive community, you kind of touched on like how like since you do work with the server side, we were wondering though if like the long term vision for Krunker will that vision include tournaments and a ranked mode, and with the tournaments will it be like sponsored FRVR tournaments, kind of similar to like how we had weeklies in 2020 hosted by Yendis.
I'm fully on board with you guys with that stuff. Brian's decisions and what he's spoken about shocked me. Like even I thought like, whoa, like chill out a second, slow down. With some of the stuff he had written on his board. Like I think all I can say is I think you'll be happy with it. But I don't think you're gonna see features like major features really addressed for the next like couple months, if not longer, because of there's too many issues, right? Like we got to get a handle on what's there. Like we've not been that involved in IO at all in the last 2 years, if at all. Like the back end stuff, I don't think has been touched at all from FRVR. So, like I'm learning how that shit runs now, right? Like the IO work was separate from internal FRVR employees. There are hyper casual games in our catalog, as you guys are more than aware, that have had competitions and stuff associated to them routinely, and like FRVR I would say is pretty good with that stuff. With IO and its competitive scene and tournaments and stuff, all I know is that it is like number one priority for Brian, that the community is number one. There's nothing else. Like if you guys don't want something or you want something, you probably have a lot more power to advocate for it now than you ever have in the past. So feel free to harass him as much as you want. I think again, I do think you'll be pretty happy with that. I wonder. Like I've definitely spoken to Brian about this stuff. There's a lot of work things that have to be figured out with that though, like budgets and all sorts of shit. My understanding is that the new community manager, who you guys will be introduced to fairly soon, will step in to all of that. And what I can tell you is that the competitive side is going to be like Brian is pushing it to him as a priority to figure out. So what he decides, I don't know, but it's already being passed on from Brian that is an important thing, that the competitive community, which is also just like administratively really valuable to the game, needs to be treated nice, right? So I don't know how that looks at the moment. Brian will step in and make some more like assertions on that, so you can have more confidence around where the future of that looks. When Brian was even quite vague to me about some of this stuff, right? So I don't know what's happening. I'll be floating around though, sponsoring tournaments here and there, and then I'll hold FRVR. Be pushing internally for support on that stuff. I've already mentioned to some of you guys that I'll be doing that, and I'll be harassing Brian for that stuff. But you know, you can't exactly just like pull money out of thin air for this stuff. There's a lot of bureaucratic shit that goes on in companies for this sort of thing. You gotta get like budgets assigned and all sorts of crap, right? But it's the community manager's job now, right? Like he's the one that's going to go figure it out. Brian's going to rescind a lot of that responsibility to him. My understanding is he's a pretty cool guy and he's got a lot of career experience in this sort of thing. Yeah, it'll be for him to figure out. So expect to hear from Brian. Expect to hear from new community manager, whoever this guy is, around a lot of that stuff. And the admins here, I can guarantee, at the very least, these guys here will be in direct communication with them. And so you're not going to be going through these like abstract processes or like needing to DM me to DM Brian at work. That's not going to happen. Like you'll be direct line to him, to both of them. So it's up to you guys to figure out with the community manager and Brian. Essentially, at this point, you're going to have to represent the community well.
Final question we have before we move to like the sponsor questions is like in the past with Krunker, we had like a map making scene, we had like a B-hop scene, competitive scene, and a lot of things were community run. I was kind of curious if when FRVR comes in, like these coming months, will we still have like community engagement when it comes to making maps or mods or things of that sort, or will all of that get like controlled by the company in the future?
No, it's actually already looking back to like it used to be. Brian's already reached out to like old skin creators and stuff. Some of you in the community probably know this already, but like people are already like existing contributors, like or previous historical contributors to the game are already being reached out to re-engage and see if they're still interested in working on it again. So yeah, it's already going full circle essentially. Like you don't have to worry too much about that. He like only gives a shit about the community. Like Brian was like full transparency. Like he was like missed. Like he DMs me saying you guys are like super cool. Like me and him talk all the time about how like, honestly like I don't get why you've all stuck around. I'm super thankful for it. So's Brian. But like it's no. When you talk about earlier, like you were saying about how you've kind of been stringing this along for a while in hopes that like something new would happen or that you see this vision for it. There's no understating the only reason it's stuck around is because of the community. So when it comes to like map making scene or whatever, competitive map making, different game mode types or whatever, like it's all, yeah, I think you're all going to be very happy with it. Like it's all community first now. I don't think there's even going to be a feature that gets worked on that isn't like the community voting for it essentially. Brian is currently walking the walk. Like he's definitely already implementing everything he's announced and is like talking to the community. And it just goes though, like I can't emphasize enough. There's so many of you. Like there's so many Discord servers, there's so many sub communities and communities within communities, and like everyone's learning it all still. So like as much feedback as you have as possible, like feel free to DM me, feel free to DM Brian, feel free to make posts or tag us in KB or whatever the fuck, like get messages to us, email FVR, I don't really give a shit, like just get the message to us somehow. And then public forums will be held, public feedback sessions and stuff will be held. Like this, and so like get the feedback to us, like teach us essentially, like we need to hear it from you.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around for that entire video. I would like to say a personal thank you to Glenn, part of FRVR at the Core Tech engineering teams and what he works on, and coming in and talking to us about all these awesome changes. And for NAC, we would obviously like to show our extreme gratitude. And this being a very, personable experience for all of us for the first time, it's very nice to see some awesome changes coming up for everybody. So again, thank you FRVR for being so transparent with us and being able to want to actually work and grow the game and get the game back on track. We do all really appreciate that. And again, like I said, if you guys want to see more content like this, definitely subscribe. This is one of first many videos that you're going to see on this YouTube channel. We are going to be doing top 10 clips monthly for NAC and also tournaments within the Krunker community. So if you guys want to see more content like that, obviously make sure to subscribe. You will see content rolling out in the very near future. Again, I want to say thank you guys for checking in and watching this video. Have a good day.